Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we are looking at one of my favorite knives of all time, certainly my favorite knife, Microtech. And honestly, this knife overshadows a whole lot of stuff that I really like. I find myself carrying it a huge portion of the time. I will say I'm a little bit biased in favor of this knife. I absolutely kind of love it. But all right, not to overstate how good it is, because while this is good, there are a couple things that I wish could be a little bit better, and we'll talk about those as we work our way through. But overall, I'm very positive on this knife. I really enjoy it. All right, let's start off with size, weight, and how this carries in pocket. Grab the ruler here. So as you can see, this knife comes in at just a hair over 8.5 inches. All right, the blade is going to be, well, although it's mostly choil, the blade is going to be 3 3/4. The cutting edge there is just a little over 3 inches, as you can see. Move down here to the handle. We have basically full 5 inch handle. It's 4 and a big 3/4. Grip area is 3 3/4 as well. Okay, so even with fairly large hands, this knife is going to work for you pretty darn well. Let me just show it in hand in both there's a hammer grip, there's a saber grip, and then there's a choked up saber grip, which is honestly how I find myself using the knife most often. All right. Let me now grab a weight for you there we go. Weight on this, and I will grab some comparisons as well in a second since we're talking about size and weight. This guy's going to weigh in at 6 ounces. Okay, some comparable knives. Here is the Cold Steel AD10, 7 ounces. Cold Steel AD15 is going to be 6.5 ounces. The Microtech MSI is only 5.4 ounces, call it 5.5 ounces. And then, of course, the Para 2. Now, this one is modified, so it's 3.5 ounces. Some are going to be a little bit more than that. But you can see this is not a knife that is designed to be super lightweight. It's not terribly heavy. For me, you've really got to get up around 8, 9, 10 ounces for me to be caring greatly about the weight of a knife. But I will say this is a knife you're going to feel in your pocket for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is that 6 ounces, but also this is a pretty thick knife. Notice the dimension here is fairly substantial. It's kind of getting into that Manix 2 territory where it's approaching 2 inches wide. The handle itself is pretty thick as well, coming in at 9/16. All right, so for those reasons, you're going to notice this in your pocket perhaps a little more than, let's say, a Spyderco Military, a Benchmade, Crooked River, something like that. You're going to notice this a little bit more. But for me, most of the time I'm wearing like cargo pants, I'm wearing a pair of jeans, even, a pair of sort of casual dress pants. And I have no issue with this knife in any of those pants. If you're wearing like a linen suit every day because you live in the Bahamas, you're probably going to notice that, and you're probably going to have to carry something much lighter and less significant. If you're wearing like track pants or workout pants every day because you're still working from home, you probably don't need a folding knife anyway, but you will notice this more in those kind of, like, I'm not taking this to the gym. I'm not taking it out on a run or on a bike ride or anything like that. It's just a little too onerous for that kind of stuff, unless you've got like a backpack or something like that you're wearing. Okay, so yes, it's a little on the heavy side, although the contouring and the not crazy heavy weight makes it pretty tolerable in terms of carry. In terms of the feel in hand, we'll get to that a little more later, but you can see that I have pretty good room even with a hammer grip, which is kind of the least efficient. If I switch to a saber grip, you can still see it lands pretty comfortably. And then of course I can choke up into this finger choil, and this is the configuration I find myself using the most. And again, I could have much larger hands and still be fine in this choked up grip. All right. So we've got size, weight, and carry out of the way. And yeah, this is not a small knife, but again, until a knife gets up around 9 or 10 ounces, I'm not really noticing that weight. Let's go ahead and get into the features and functions of the knife itself, beginning with the blade the way that we normally do. So I find this to be a very attractive blade. It is flat ground. We've got sort of a drop point style blade here, not a whole lot of belly, pretty wide top swedge, very fine point. So don't go dropping this guy on the sidewalk or on a cement floor unless you want to have to go through reprofiling or buying a new blade or something like that, which none of which are going to be super pleasant. It is fairly thin behind the edge, especially if you compare it to the other knives I brought in here a second ago. Let's stick to just the MSI for now. Compared to the MSI, this is nice and thin behind the edge, which I definitely appreciate. And the blade stock thickness is about the same. Okay, so. By the way, the other thing is, even though this is a wide blade, it's not a super wide primary bevel. It's not that much different than the MSI, but they are able to get that nice thin cutting edge, which is definitely a win and something that I appreciate a lot for performance. As you can see, this is the black coated blade. It's held up really well. You got the Microtech symbol here. You've got the Borka Blades symbol here. All of that stuff, I mean, is pretty obvious just from you looking through the camera. Okay. How has this performed for me? I have to say quite well. Now, I haven't gone and taken this to be tested. I haven't, tried to see how many miles of cardboard it can cut up. If I need to cut up a cardboard box, I cut one up and carry on with my day. And for my average regular use, the edge retention has been quite good. All right. Now, I know there's comments. I know there's been some discussion about Microtech, needing to take their M390 a little bit harder. And generally, I agree. In a perfect world, I would like to see all steels, heat treated to the highest performance that they can be heat treated to while still retaining good toughness. For whatever reason, Microtech doesn't do that. I suspect because Microtech, I think they get. My impression is that Microtech gets a number of customers outside of the knife community, and those people probably aren't great at sharpening. Now, for those of us in the knife community where we kind of know what it's going to take to sharpen a really high performance steel, of course we want it as hard as we can. They've got to make those choices, and they've chosen to go, the 58, 59 Rockwell hardness route. Do I wish it were higher? Yes. Has it been good in my experience? Also, yes. All right. And there may be some of you who, I don't know, are cutting tires off of rims every single day, or I don't know, cutting asphalt roads in half, and you need something much, much harder to put up with that kind of abuse. Maybe carpet fiber can be really bad. So maybe you're cutting miles and miles of carpet every single day, and you need the hardest possible steel you can get. In that case, you probably are doing, S90V or something like that anyway. So the performance for me has been good. That's a little bit of a steel discussion that I didn't mean to get into, but I'll throw that in for free. Let's go ahead and talk about the action, lockup and deployment on this. So this is, of course, the ram lock. It will work one-handed. The way my hand sort of lands on this handle, if I want to shut the blade, I just sort of find myself naturally gravitating to using two fingers. But one of the tests I always do to determine sort of the quality of a lock is try it with one and see what happens. And this does work quite nicely with one hand. We do have dual row ceramic bearings here, which is a win. I do wish if you're going to go with bearings in a knife, I like phosphor bronze as well, but if you're going to go with bearings, I'd like to see dual row bearings because of that extra weight disbursement and that little extra stability in terms of side to side blade play. But not all knives do it. This one does, and I'm really happy about that. The one complaint I have about the action is that the detent is pretty soft. So I can spidey flick this, but you sort of have to be good at it. Like I'm able to sort of build up a certain amount of tension in my hand, and because of that, I can spidey flick a lot of things that, not everyone's going to be able to flick well. And this is one of those knives where there's not quite enough detent. You really kind of have to preload it to get it to flick out well. The detent could be just a little stiffer. Now, I suspect, as many of you talked about, I've had no blade, I've had no lock stick with this. The MSI, when I first got it, definitely did have some lock stick, but that has gone away pretty quickly. This one never had lock stick, doesn't have it now, and I wonder if maybe Microtech in R&D we're trying to balance that. We don't want there to be lock stick, and so we're changing the geometry slightly to get that to go away. And in doing so, they softened the detent a little bit too much. All right. I'm not, I don't work at Microtech. I don't know that for sure. The other thing I'll say is I really, really like the crossbar style locks that use the coil spring instead of a Omega spring, or whatever, various other companies call their bent spring. But a coil spring is going to be longer lasting and have a little more tension. And so that's something I do like quite a lot. Okay, so lockup and deployment, good, but not amazing, just because the detent is a little soft on these. What about the handle construction? There are a number of variations of these. You can get them in aluminum. You can get a couple of different G10 finishes. I don't think the MSI comes in like an FRN handle I don't think the stitch comes in an FRN handle the way the MSI does. I think it's only G10 or aluminum, but I could be wrong on that. Notice they have put a spacer in here in case you want to put that lock on the clip on the other side. So pretty fully ambidextrous. They've tried to reduce the amount of metal in these. So if you kind of look in there, you can see. Do I have a light nearby? Guess I don't. You'll just have to take my word for it. The metal frame kind of follows the back of the knife. And so they have tried to make as much as they could out of G10. It's very solid, really, really confidence inspiring. The fluted G10 is quite grippy. I'm assuming the fluted aluminum would be the same, and I can't remember what other finishes are available on this, but obviously I can only speak to this one. The clip is decently placed. I don't get a hot spot from it very easily. Yeah, I can't really find a way to get a hot spot here. The only really uncomfortable grip is going to be like a full-on reverse or draw cutting grip. And I just don't find myself using that grip in any kind of real life scenario other than, showing you grips on YouTube. So ergonomics, I'm pretty happy with the ergonomics. There are a couple of complaints I do have about this, and you can see it right here. These screws, I wish they were flush fitting screws. And while you notice it here, this is where it becomes a problem, because the clip, I've got a couple of pairs of pants where as I try to put this on, they almost get stuck right here. So flush fitting screws would have been a big improvement. And I know this is here for extra retention, like on the seam of that pocket, but maybe even just make it a little bit smaller would be helpful. And so, yeah, the only real complaint from the handle construction that I have is the clip. And Microtech, they're not really known for doing a great job with their clips. And this one, it's mostly the screws. I think if you just switch these out for flush fitting screws, that would make a huge, huge difference. Even just smaller headed screws would probably make a significant improvement. All right, so let's do a couple of comparisons. So I've made a couple of points here that, to me, the math isn't great on this knife. It's not cheap. It's pretty comfortable. It's a little heavy. The blade steel is good, but not amazing. The blade to handle ratio is kind of terrible. It's a very short cutting edge for a very substantial knife. So there are definitely downsides to this. However, I love this knife. So first of all, I think it looks absolutely amazing. It feels great in hand. I love the offset blade for cutting. And I didn't discuss that under blade shape, but I love the way the blade is sort of projected out from the handle a little bit. We've seen that on a number of different knives. And it's a common feature to get that cutting edge out in front of your fingers, which is a huge win. And so I want to bring in the MSI. And when I talked about the MSI, I said this is probably the best thing that Microtech has done in terms of a practical, widely appealing user that everyone can enjoy. And I still stand by that, despite the fact that, on paper, there's every reason to prefer the MSI. I still like the Stitch a little bit more, which isn't really fair, but it just is what it is, okay? And I have a couple of other knives that I want to sort of bring in by way of comparison. I love the 8015. It is another one on my short list of all-time favorite knives. Is it more comfortable than the 8010? No. Is it, does it have a better cutting edge? Is there anything measurably superior about the 8015 to the 8010? No. In fact, it's not as comfortable in hand. It's, but and I think they're also more expensive. So there's every reason to buy the 8010 over the 8015. I absolutely love both of these. I still stand by the fact that these two knives, you are looking at the pinnacle of cold steel right here. These are the best things that cold steel has ever done and possibly ever will do. Of course, both Andrew Demko designs, a designer that I love, but the 8015, because it's just got that scorpion lock, which is a little bit interesting and cool, it just does it for me to a greater degree. Now, if anyone called me or sent me a message and said, "Hey, Kevin, I'm looking at some cold steel knives. Which one should I buy?" I'm going to say the 8010 every time because it's a much safer bet. It's just a great knife. I mean, it's so comfortable in hand. It's tough. It's affordable. It's amazing. This is one of the very best folding knives on the market. And I went through that whole discussion because I kind of feel the same way about the Stitch MSI comparison. If someone asked me which one of these to buy, 100% I'm going to go MSI. It's cheaper. It feels a little better in hand. It has a longer cutting edge. It weighs less. It's easier to carry. Right? There's a lot going for the Microtech MSI, and yet I still like the Stitch just a little bit better. Okay, and so it doesn't have to make sense, and in this case it doesn't, but I am absolutely enamored with this knife. I have been for many years, since I first saw a Borka Stitch, since I reviewed a Borka Stitch so long ago. I've wanted one. When they came out with the automatic, I was so disappointed, and so now that there's a manual version with the ram lock, which is a very good lock, I'm really excited to have this and use it. And I really enjoy this knife. I hope that I have given you enough data that you can sort of balance yourself and kind of make a good judgment call in terms of what suits you and whether you should buy this or not. If you got any questions, put them down in the comments below. If you want to add anything, again, put it down in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.